I'm delighted to welcome today Penny, who is otherwise known as Dr. Zoolittle. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you, Elaine. It's so much fun to be here.
So, Dr. Zoolittle, my listeners usually are health people. We get all sorts of people listening, but typically from a health perspective. And that's why I'm interested in speaking to you, because you do health, but for pets, don't you? I'm sure you do your own health as well, but predominantly for pets. But you have had a lot of experience in bigger animals as well.
That's right. So I have a background working with zoo animals, improving their welfare, mental health and behaviour in captivity. And I realised along the way that sometimes you really just can't solve those behavioural or psychological issues if there's an underlying health issue. Mm-hmm. And I'd spent some time working with some lovely people in the veterinary departments, but the model that the vets were using is the typical allopathic pharmaceutical, sort of diagnose after there's a problem there and try and sort of, be reactive to the situation. And I didn't also like the fact that most of the pharmaceuticals were not tested and known to be safe for those species. So it really pulled me across to, how do animals get well in the wild? How do they get well when we're not around? They must take responsibility. And so that led into something called zoo pharmacognosy, which then led into functional medicine, which then led me into regenerative medicine. And so I now work with all these fabulous, really natural modalities that animals would naturally use and apply that to their physical health. So I have both sides of the coin.
Brilliant. And everything that you said there maps exactly to how I help my clients in the health world. So whether it's personal health or animal health, we're all living cells, aren't we? We're all living, breathing. We may have different suits that we wear, skin or fur or whatever it is, but fundamentally, it's about life, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, the pathways of life and biology, health and healing, it's certainly in the mammal course, family, are really the same. And mammals is where I do my work. That's always where I did it with the zoo animals. And then just realizing how many pets are struggling with those same health issues that the captive zoo animals, or in fact us, suffer from. And yet the wild animals don't have those diseases. Those diseases are not bringing them down. They're not shortening their lifespans. It's the ones in captivity. So then that was the clue. Okay, it's us. Something we're doing isn't quite right. And we all love our pets so much. We, ask any devoted pet parent and they'll say, I want my pet to live forever. You know they're going to go sooner, but you don't want that to happen. You do anything in your power to change it. And yet we have absolutely no education or information, even knowledge that it's possible to have them live their full lifespan without having a health decline going down into the disease pathway. And so that's really a huge part of my message, is to just let pet parents know you can really give a dog 20 years of good, healthy life. You can give a cat 30 years of good, healthy life. These are their natural lifespans. And by doing a few tweaks along the way, using those modalities and just some understanding of very basic health systems, the first being that you have a blueprint in you to heal, and it's a model for health, not a model for disease. So work with that, and it's amazing.
Absolutely. And I'm sure I'll say again several times, it's so similar to our body, because if we give it the right environment, the body will heal itself. We don't have to have injections for this, that and the other thing, and preventative this and that. We just look at what we're eating, how we're assimilating it, how our body physical health is, but also our emotional health. So I guess that would have played a big part with wild animals, or animals that you would normally see in the wild, shall we say, to rephrase that. And then when they're put into captivity, I know there's an awful lot of conversation about the morality of zoos and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. How did you get into zoos in the first place, Penny?
Well, that was a dream that I'd had and I remember the day vividly. I was 5 years old. It was our school excursion to Melbourne Zoo, and I saw the keeper talk, where the keeper, friend, trainer, whatever you want to call it, of the sea lions was able to go into the enclosure with them. I'd never seen that before. I'd been to the zoo before, but I'd never seen someone going inside. And then there was no barrier in the way. There was a friendship, there was an interaction, a relationship between the animal and the human. And I said, my gosh, there's nothing on this planet that I want more than that. And to then have a positive effect into their, I was 5 and I decided at that point, I am going to work in zoos, making animals, well, not making, helping animals have the happiness that I think that they deserve. And so obviously when you're 5, you don't necessarily understand exactly what that pathway is going to look like, all the choices along the way, the names of all the disciplines, but it evolved with me and I just never took no for an answer. I volunteered, I investigated, I networked with people at conferences, I contacted people in undergrad who were writing papers in this field and just said, listen, I have a question. I just did anything that was going to get me there because that's what I knew I was born to do.
Brilliant. Are you actually a doctor? Is that your sort of trading title, as it were?
It's trading title, as it were. I've studied, as I said, cognitive ethology, which is a sort of animal mental health, animal behaviour, but using the deliberate thinking as opposed to instinct sort of type behaviours. Then within that, I focused into the neuroscience of sensory modalities, because without your senses, you're not receiving any information. And without receiving the information, you can't then process it and then outwork a behaviour. So by understanding the sort of almost the root cause of a pathway of behaviour to then interpret how the animal is feeling, I had to go back to the neuroscience of the senses. And of course, they've got very different senses to us in some ways, or they're tuned differently. So frequency hearing might be different for a cat than it is for a bat, or it is for a human. In fact, it is. And same with the sense of smell. Dogs lead with the sense of smell. We've no idea what that world is like until we can get inside their shoes, their paws, if you like, and start to appreciate their world. So I did a lot of study, but never officially doctor. I've studied functional medicine, regenerative medicine, orthomolecular medicine, zoopharmacognosy, which, as I said, is animal self-medication. But there isn't really one course that you can do that ties all those things together. If you're going to work in medicine with animals, you have a pathway, and that's called veterinary. And I didn't like the results that I was seeing because they weren't actually able to heal in many cases. They could alleviate some suffering, but not heal. And that's a massive difference when you're talking about welfare and quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. The same as humans as well. Clients come to me because typically they've been sent home by the doctor. The doctor can't find what's wrong with them. But they say, here we are, here's a bunch of prescriptions, try these. And then before you know where they are, they're on 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 medications. And then they're getting symptoms. And when I look at their medication, they're all interacting against one another and causing the problems, and it's just, you want to throw your arms up in horror, but that's the way, unfortunately, the society has conditioned many people to believe that that's the only way to pop a pill or an injection or something. So what kind of things can people do to help? I'm surprised you said a cat 30 years and a dog 20 years. That's amazing.
And no one knows that. In fact, before coming into really wanting to focus on the pets, I couldn't have even told you that, and I'm a zoologist, right? So, but you look at, okay, what are the records for the oldest living? What are the comparative species in terms of size and metabolism things in the what? It's very clear. The oldest cat on record lived to 38.
Wow.
And the pet parent for that cat also has the record for the second oldest cat at 36, and then has another 15 cats that have made it over 30. So this is not like a one-off miracle cat. This guy obviously knows what he's doing. And it's the same with dogs. They should, and it's really been in the last sort of 70 years, since about the end of the Second World War and the start of big farming, agricultural on scale, as opposed to cottage gardening or something like that, where we've altered the food chain and brought a lot of artificial chemicals into the environment at large, whether that's plastics industry, mining industry, food processing, whatever. the ability for our bodies to cope with that onslaught was is powerful, because we're still here. We're still alive and healing and thriving, but it was a huge assault in a very short space of time, and without introducing modalities to detox and that sort of thing, we are losing the lifespan length, and we're losing the quality of the life, certainly in the later years, and that's for us and for pets. And I have to confess, I've gone off track and forgotten your question.
I don't remember what it was either. This happens often. We just go anywhere and everywhere. I'm sure we'll come back. And
when you talk about passion topics, you know, your heart just takes over the mouth and you run on.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we were talking about it was about the age. I was saying I was surprised about the age of, 30 for a cat and 20 for a dog. My a neighbour where I lived, she went away and asked me to keep an eye on George. George was a cat who was 20, can't remember, it was 23 or 25. He'd got only half a mouth. His ears had been lopped off. He didn't have a tail. And he was shot at several times, and he kept on getting, sort of peppered by these hunters. And just unfortunate. I think it's about 3 times this type of thing happened, and each time there was another catastrophe. And we had no teeth. I mean, poor old stick, but he was the most beautiful, beautiful George. And when she went away, I looked after him, and I was always petrified that he'd pop off when she was away. But he went on for quite a long time afterwards, because he was loved, he was looked after, he was fed properly, nurtured.
Makes such a difference. The right environment for the mind, sense of belonging, sense of joy, sense of freedom to make your own decisions, sense of confidence into who you are, and that you can be who you are with love, that all of those things matter to the animal as well. And that was a lot of the stuff that I would bring into the zoo environment for the wild animals, exotic species. But it's so critical if you're going to, if you don't have the will to live, you won't. You'll start to let go, and some people will linger, and some animals will linger a long time in that state of, I'm not really wanting to live. When welfare is so compromised that you start to shut down, there's this horrendous thing called learned helplessness, which happens to animals when they are continually thwarted from being able to do anything that is valuable to them. It's just, I mean, I loathe it, just, it's horrendous. But they're alive, but they're almost catatonic. They're just a shell, with this little broken-hearted mind in there who's let go, but the body is sustaining them. It works the other way as well. So being loved and having the right environment emotionally is just as important as having the right environment metabolically or biochemically, or any of the things that we're doing in terms of food and the access to the things that sustain physical life. They go together.
Absolutely spot on. And every time with the people who come to me with cancer diagnosis, for example, I've become a go-to cancer person because of my own recovery from stage 4 in a record 3 months. And the mind thing, is just huge. If you believe you'll be fixed, you can fix yourself, you will do. If you believed, I like the term that you used, learned helplessness. There's so many people that are going around in this catatonic state who just, poor me, victim, and all the rest of it, which is so sad because it's unnecessary, but it's, it's understandable for some people how and why they got into that situation. So what can pet parents do to lengthen the life and make the life a lot more pleasurable for their pets?
There are literally hundreds of things, so I'll give you examples for sure, but I can't obviously tell you the whole thing in one go. I largely break up the pathways forward into 2 camps. One I would call the sort of basic lifestyle, normal pet care type of things that are available to you, and then the things that are more maybe a higher level therapy. Maybe you need a little bit more effort. There's maybe more cost involved in those, and I tend to think of those more like sort of zoobiohacking. So obviously is the word for the animals, and we're biohacking. So we're going to optimize their physiology, optimize their biochemistry. And some of those things can be just as free as these ones, but sometimes they're going to look at a cost involved. But over on this side of the thing, I have 8 pillars of longevity, or 8 pillars of juvenescence, which is the restructuring of youthfulness on a biological level. The reason why younger children and younger animals will heal so quickly is because they're full of all of the things that are required to give them rapid acceleration healing. And remember, this is something that was sort of a bit obvious, but also earth-shattering when you really take the time to think what that means and how far typical medical practice has moved away from that. And there's only one thing ever heals. There's only absolutely one thing that will heal me, and that's my own immune system. There's no doctor, no drug, no concept, no modality, no sanatorium or clinic. My immune system is the only thing that will heal me. And I can use things like therapies and nutraceuticals or whatever to assist it, but without that, I've got nothing. So you have to start with nurturing and strengthening, optimizing that, because then you get a multiplication effect throughout the body. So when I have the 8 pillars, one of the biggest things that parents unfortunately and very inadvertently get wrong is their food. Fundamental. It's so obvious. What you put in is what you get out, and we know that for 100 different, such a cliched saying that we're all familiar with it. But when it comes to pet food, where somehow we turn our brain off and we think that this little nugget of dried, highly processed, nutritionally dead, artificially flavored, whatever is a really fun, cool, balanced, healthy diet. No, are you kidding me? What lion goes around eating sandwiches, right, with all the bread and carbohydrates in it? No, lions eat meat, and there's a reason they eat meat, because their body cannot absorb and take nutrients from anything other than animal protein sources. So why are we feeding a cat a kibble that by definition must be at least 40% carbohydrate in order to make a kibble? Because you can't make a kibble without any flour or any kind of carbohydrate. It doesn't work. You need that to do the puffing up and the drying out and creating the kibble. So 40% carbohydrate when a cat needs 2% carbohydrate maximum, which comes from eating the guts of, say, a rabbit who's eaten grass. So that grass becomes the carbohydrate that the cat eats. But that's it. They don't need any more. They don't want any more. And they're taking those carbohydrates because there's a fabulous strength of microbiome in there, which will then help the cat's microbiome. So they don't want kibble. It's the same with dogs. Kibble single-handedly, I don't care what brand you have, it's the same. If you look at the ingredients list, and I teach my patients, my clients, how to do exactly that, because it's a totally different set of rules in terms of the legalities of what you specify or don't specify. Knowing how to read a pet food label is a critical thing. And once you do, the scales fall from your eyes and you just think, why was I even thinking of feeding it? It's like saying, I'm going to have dry, nasty, tasteless, dried food with no healthy things in it. Loads of recycled fats go in there from the fish and chip shop industry. That fat gets recycled into pet food. They actually have to add artificial addictive substances called palatants to pet food so the animals will eat it, because otherwise they recognize that this is not food, and they don't. So you get the pet foods are addictive deliberately. They're starting off with what they call feed grade meat, which isn't really even meat, but it's definitely not food grade. Food grade is legislated and it's safe, and that's what we eat. Feed grade can be, cancer lumps that have been cut off a carcass in the abattoir. It can be the beaks and the hooves and the claws and the eyelashes, and right. It can be. Doesn't have to be meat to be in pet food. And in actual fact, pet food often tragically contains the meat that have done the tests of euthanized other pets. Now that's just abhorrent to any pet parent to know that your pet is eating a dead pet of someone else, and the fact that that pet got into that food chain because they were euthanized, which means there's pentobarbiturates in there, which is the lethal drug to, right? You are poisoning your animals with commercial pet food. There's no two ways about it, and I don't pull my punches. So the first thing we always do is look at how can we move away from a bowl of poison every day to something that's going to nourish the body, feed those cells, optimize energy, do all the nice things that we know that lovely food can do. but that's one pillar out of 8. And we need to look at, are we filtering our water, for example? That's a really critical thing. There's so much junk in tap water that our pets, because their bodies are smaller, will be more heavily impacted by. We want to look at detoxing, because we are exposing them to all these things, and they've got no clothes on, and then they groom. So anything that they've lain upon or walked through gets on their fur. It can go transdermally sometimes and get into the bloodstream that way. But if not, then they can ingest it through grooming and licking. And so now the toxins are in as well. So they've got no clothing protection the way we do. So they're, again, the impact of those lawn chemicals or pesticides or the scotch guarding that you might have on fabrics, that all of that gets into the pets and poisons them. So we must set a detox program to help them eliminate those things, because usually it's the livers and the kidneys that will go sooner because they're just being overworked all the time. Microbiome, we want to increase the flora diversity in their gut system to help with the absorption. Also 70+% of their immune system is created in the gut system. So if the gut is not in a good optimized area, you're not going to have that immune system, that single thing that is going to heal you. There's access to the natural environments. They need to have their paws on the grass. They need to get direct sunshine. So there's, in terms of literally practical things, if you can change your pet's feeding bowls from plastic into glass is the best, you're already doing them a massive favor. Pet food and water bowls are one of the dirtiest, when the scientists look at, under the microscope and do the test, one of the dirtiest pieces of furniture in your house. It's your toilet bowl, your rubbish bin, and your pet's bowls, because people get lazy about not washing their pet's bowls properly every day. And plastic will leach plastic out into the food, causing those kind of contaminants, especially if the water is sitting in the sun, things like that. The algae grows. The dogs, we're always told don't kiss dogs on the mouth because you never know where their mouth's been, and but all of that's going into their water bowl, and then it's starting to grow little colonies of things. And so we want to make sure that the water and their food bowls are pristine. And if you use glass, then bacteria can't grow on it and get in the crevices and things, because there are no crevices. There's no little pores in it like there is with plastic, or even with china. If the glaze isn't very good, it can get. So as something as simple, buying beautiful glass bowls for your pets and filtering the water is going to make a big difference. They're such tiny things, they'll cost you almost nothing, but those will have a big impact. So there's a couple of things just in that pillar of water. But then if we're changing the food and we're adding some activated charcoal, or if we're putting some chlorella and spirulina into their diet, so as I said, I've got, well over 100 different things that are free or almost free, that if you put them together, we're literally talking about doubling the healthy lifespan of the pets.
Wow, that's so interesting, and speaks to what I tell the humans, the owners. I was quite reassured actually, because I have I have a cat that I've inherited, Bobby, and we don't know anything about him at all, don't know how old he is, but he's a super lovely little boy. I have a glass bowl for his food, and I have a stainless steel for the water, and I filter the water. I have a special water filter for me, and he loves that water. And in fact, I never used to see him drinking water until I got this particular new filter. So it really does. He does appreciate it. How can people make the change? What top tips would you give for people trying to transition from the regular store-bought pet food? I mean, do you have to go out and buy, fresh meat for the animals? Let's take a cat, as I've got one and I'm interested.
Yeah, of course. And just further to your point about the water preference, cats actually have taste buds that can distinguish the different mineral content and the different composition of water. They're very, very sensitive on the palate to different waters, and they will be very selective because they know this one's not good for me or this one is. So it's really interesting that you've observed that behavior where they'll say, don't actually want that one, I don't like it. However, over here, different story. And also cats are amazing, just side note, but I will answer your question. They, on their tongue, they don't have any receptors for sweet. How we have the different flavors that we can discern. Cats don't have any flavors for sweet. They can't discern that. What they do have, though, is a very fine-tuned array of receptors on their tongues, taste buds, for all the different separate amino acids. Now, amino acids are the chains that make up any protein. And when you remember that a cat only eats protein, we think, oh, it's meat. We can taste the savouriness or something like that. We couldn't tell you that there's arginine or leucine or valine or, any of those but the cat, they can. And so they can be very discerning with their diet and saying, I'm not going to actually eat that piece of the animal that I've just killed, like let's say it's a mouse or a rabbit for a domestic cat. I'm not going to actually eat that bit there because I've got enough of that in my body right now, of those amino acids, but I am going to eat this bit here. They can really discern on that level and optimize their own health. But without access to those things, because they've got a bowl of dry food in front of them, they're forced to just eat, or hunt if they have their freedom to do so. So what can we do with food? We're so conditioned by veterinarians and the media industry, advertising, saying you feed your pets dry pet food. But dry pet food, we only started being a thing about the 1890s and then really took over in about the 1940s. And so what did people feed their animals before then? They fed them table scraps. They fed them leftovers. They fed them peelings and all, Now, so there are about 10 steps in between the bottom of the pile over here, your bowl of kibble, and your best optimized, perfectly balanced, fabulous food over here, right? So anything that you can do to move away from highly processed is a step in the right direction. Now, it might be a case of you start slowly, and often we'll recommend that, especially for cats, because they're very finicky about what they do and don't eat. We'll come back to that if we need to. Anything that you can add into their bowl that is fresh, raw, wholesome, whole food, organic if you can, that's a plus. Even if you halved their kibble quota and took 50% of the kibble out of the equation and gave them the offcuts, like you're preparing some chicken for dinner and you're going to make a casserole or something, all the little funny bits that you're cutting off, because you think, oh, I don't know what that bit is, give that to the cat. That now becomes the cat's other half of their dinner. And if you've got a tin of tuna that's been in the fridge for a couple of days and looking a little bit crusty around the edges, where you go, okay, well, I don't really want to eat that, it's still fine for the cat. Now, I'm not suggesting that you give any animal moldy or bad food, right? But I'm trying to suggestions of ways that people can add without any further expense, if that's a critical factor. Now, actually, I found that I could feed my pets a raw food balanced diet, and it was cheaper than buying, the commercial stuff. Now, that's over a time frame of a month. If I averaged out the costs, it was cheaper, only by a little bit, but it was actually cheaper than the commercial. And what I was giving them was 10,000 times better. So we're so blessed in the UK with loads of companies that have created balanced, nutritionally whole, raw pet food for dogs and for cats. And yes, they need to have different ones. There are dozens of brands that I've put together. I've researched what their practices are, what they're sourcing their materials and all that sort of thing. So if you want a no fuss, really convenient, and these guys you can go on subscription with them so that they just send a delivery out to your door on a monthly basis or something like that, because you won't find it in the supermarkets, right? So you need to contact the companies directly, but they've got a system in place. You don't have to drive to their depot in some weird part of the country. You can just have everything shipped to your door. It can be fresh, it can be frozen, it can be freeze dried, so you can have the food and it's raw still, but it can sit in your pantry. So that from a convenience point of view, it's really, you pour out the appropriate amount, you add water if you want to, you let it get to room temperature if it's coming out of the freezer, you're defrosting it first and then serve. But it's no fuss. It's just as easy as going and pouring out biscuits into a bowl. You can make their own. You can supplement with cats, particularly because again the protein. Giving a cat a raw egg every day or every second day. Giving them a sardine out of the sardine tin. I mean, sardines are a superfood for cats. They're amazing. You can give your cats all kinds of herbal teas and things. So you can brew a chamomile tea, a green tea, a peppermint tea, all those kinds of things. Let it steep and cool, and then add a few spoonfuls of that to their food. Even on kibble, that's going to amplify the quality of nutrients that are going into them, because you've got these flavonoids and polyphenols and all sorts of things that are going to boost. So my recommendation is for everyone to think about your budget and your lifestyle, but do the math, work out if it is going to be, where it sits in your budget. but move away from that. The more fresh, the more raw, the more whole food you can give, the longer your cat will live. It's a guarantee. The science says on average, if you feed a raw food diet, you'll add 3 years of lifespan, 3 healthy years of lifespan, just by changing the food.
Fabulous. Do dogs and cats eat vegetables?
Dogs absolutely eat vegetables. Cats, the short answer is no. The short answer is no. They can get some health benefits from some of the plant materials, like I've just said, with herbal teas, for example. But their system is not designed to uptake nutrients from plant materials. They lack an enzyme in the mouth that is part of the digestive system that enables them to metabolize that. They just don't have it. So therefore you can feed them that, but all you're doing is adding some bulk to their tummy. Now, if you want to help them get fiber, then that's a really great way of getting fiber, because we don't really metabolize fiber. We use it to keep things moving. We use it to feed the microbiome, for example, because the bacteria that live in the gut system require nourishment, and fiber is one of the key criteria for that. So if you give them some vegetable materials, then it will do some good to their body, but they won't get any energy themselves from that. Right. Whereas dogs you can give, with the exception of grapes and raisins and this alternative dried grapes, you don't do that, and onions, you're pretty much okay with anything. Now I tend not to say tomatoes and potatoes as well, because they're in the deadly nightshade family. I tend not to say a lot of peas, beans and legumes, because they've got all the anti-nutrients in them. But your leafy greens and your hard crunchies, so your apples and your pears and your carrots and your kale and broccoli and cauliflower, some of the best things you can give dogs. Just a piece of broccoli every day, like a little green tree of broccoli like that every day, will reduce your dog's chances of getting cancer. And bear in mind that 1 in 2 dogs in both the UK and the US at the moment get cancer. 1 in 2.
That's incredible.
A piece of broccoli in their bowl every day will decrease their cancer chances by 90%. 90%.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's exactly the same for humans. 1 in 2 humans now are well, we all know somebody that's had cancer or died from cancer, unfortunately. It's everywhere, and cancer research is saying 1 in 2, and I think we're pretty at that now. Actually, it's remarkable. Although cancer is in all of us, it just needs something to trigger it, and so on. So the more we can do to help our own internal environment. You mentioned also about the mind-body connection. So with humans, I know it's absolutely huge, and those people who decide that they're going to recover will do, pretty much, if they do all the right things as well. Although sadly a lot of people that I see, they're told too little too late type of thing, but we do what we can to help. But quite a lot of the time we can do wonders, but it has to come from within. So how do you connect with the minds of the animals when you're doing your whatever it is that you do? Do you consult, or what do you call it that you do with them?
Well, I do both consulting and coaching. So I'll give the education material like I'm sharing today. You know, these are the things you can do, and I can give you as much or as little science as you want along the way with that. But then obviously people like to know how to implement, and they obviously have questions along the way. So coaching as well, where I take you through, and you can come back to me with anything and we'll go together. I'll lead you in that pathway to help your animal with that. Sorry, I've just gone blank. What was your?
It was the mind thing with the
yes,
animals.
Thank you. When you're working with pets, when I'm working with pets, each one of them has a parent, whether you want to call them owner or whatever. But I mean, they've got a parent who is there to look after them as a dependent, to provide for their needs and to help them through life. And because of that, the pet has already got the infrastructure that they need. They've got a loving home. They've got people who lavish attention and time on them. They've got someone keeping an eye out for their welfare. They have bonds that have grown over time. They've got a relationship of trust with so all of those things are there to empower the pet with what they need. When you're working with an animal in the zoo, they're not technically really owned by anyone, or it depends on the zoo structure. Are they owned by the state or the local community? Are they owned by a charity? Like it's a grey area. But realistically, very, very few zoos have a one-to-one keeper animal relationship. Some of the very, very best zoos do have something like that, where you can really give them the level of care that they deserve. But most tend to just sort of have a more generic, well, I run keeper and I look after 50 species across the day. So they might love them the same way that we love the pets, but the time investment isn't able to be there to the same extent. And then of course the zoo is going to be open for 8, 10, whatever hours a day, and then it's shut. And then what happens? There's no one there to look after the animals. They have to look after themselves in that time frame. So there's all sorts of welfare issues in terms of, you know, potentially being bored, or what if they need help and no one's there? But I mean, that's a separate question. There are lots of things that the zoos and I could do to help those animals in that and create that safety place. The pets already have that, but that doesn't mean we can't also then amplify that, and we can. And a lot of the youthful juvenescence principles and behaviours and things that you can implement into their life have the dual effect of increasing that welfare and that mental space and that will to live and that joy of life side of it. So we all know that animals need to have exercise, whether they're a cat or a dog, and there are other species too, but obviously that most people will have a cat or a dog, you know, and you would never dream of thinking that it was fine to not let them go outside and have exercise, or even if they have to be inside for whatever reason, that you wouldn't engage them in playtime or have a little running track or something where they could, you know, use their body. But when you engage with them, that's amplifying that will to live and that joy of life, because they see you as just about the most important part of their life. You're there. You bring the food, you bring the toys, you bring the new smells from the outside world, you bring new people into the environment, you bring new flavors into their world, you bring the aspects of touch, snuggling up on the couch together, whatever it happens to be. The person is usually the most valuable asset for a pet. They've got their favorite toy and their favorite blanket, but you are the most important asset. So it's really you and the relationship you have with them that fosters how much joy they have in life, how much rewarding experience they have, enrichment that they have. Because if you leave them all day with no toys, no music, no play dates, no puppy walking coming in for the day, no scents around the house, like you can leave little piles of herbs in different parts of the gut, you know, in the house for the cats to find and then roll in, because you know how cats always love to roll in mint and dandelions and whatever to get that smell, right? You can do all that inside. You can give them a cat flap so they can go in and out and make their own decisions. Being empowered to make your own decisions is a massive thing for welfare. And so often we just come down and control. We say, there's your dinner, that's what you get. Rather than, I tell you what, I'm going to make 5 little bowls of 5 different things. I'm going to hide them around the house or the garden so that you can use your nose to go and problem solve where the food is, the way you would have done in the wild, right? And you can use your problem solving skills, your sensory skills, your mobility skills to go and find them. And then if you don't like that bowl, you don't have to eat it, because there's another one hidden over there that's got something different in it. So you've made a game. You've interacted with them to get, you know, together. They're enjoying your company in that. You've given them choice, you've given them control, you've given them freedom, you've given them enrichment. And how simple is that? Rather than one bowl of food in the normal spot, we've got 5 bowls of foods of different things hidden around. It takes you extra 2 minutes, maybe, right? But it amplifies their experience 1,000-fold.
Wonderful. Everybody ends up happy days. What about the training? You hear of people taking their dogs for training. Is that a thing? Is it a good thing? Is it necessary?
Listen, animals learn every single day, no matter how old or young they are, and no matter if we formalize that or not, because they're receiving information from their environment and from us, and are making assessments and decisions on the basis of that information. So whether you train them or whether you don't train them, they're going to learn. What we do with training is create a structured pathway for positive results, for good outcomes at the end, for improved freedom and joy of life for the dog, because and the cat too. I mean, I've done a lot of cat training. What we've asked pets to do is to exit their own natural society and to come into human society and live by human cultural rules, by human acceptable behaviours, and we kind of want them to do it magically without help. So it's like, no. Imagine if you went to live in a foreign country where you didn't speak the language and you don't have a guide to help you through. You have no idea whether to take your shoes off at the door or not, whether you should burp at the dinner table out loud or not, whether you'd eat with the right hand, the left hand, the cutlery or the chopsticks. You don't, right? Unless somebody tells you, you're making faux pas after faux pas, your confidence goes down, your embarrassment goes up. There's a whole bunch of like, oh my gosh, if only you knew what my intent of the heart was, but all you're able to assess me is on my behavior and all the things I've just got wrong. And so the poor dogs and cats, when they enter into our family home, are thinking, okay, well, I know how to cat. I know all the things about how to cat. Because I am one, or I know how to dog because I am dog, right? And so but it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to, pee on the furniture, but it looks like a tree. I'm allowed to pee on a tree. Like, what? I don't get it. 10 minutes ago, you loved me and you gave me kisses and rubbed my ears and did all nice things. And now you're smacking me. Like, hang on a minute. Can I trust you? This is freaking me out. And so the dog goes into like, safety, not safety, safety, not safety. It's a very unstable place to be. So without training, we can't bring our animals into a place where they know what the rules and the etiquettes are. They know how to engage in this environment. They know the expectations, so they can be themselves following some rules that weren't sort of their society's rules, but they're willing to learn because they want to be part of our life. So not training an animal, I think, is just as bad as not feeding them. Like, it's heinous to do that, leave them deprived of any sense of confidence and safety, because am I going to get yelled for something? Like, I don't know why I'm being yelled at. I don't know why I'm being smacked. I don't know why the slipper's being thrown at me. Like, and obviously good pet parents aren't going to do those things, but there are plenty of bad people out there who do bad things to animals. So that, the animal doesn't get to pick who their parents are any more than we do, I suppose. But yeah. But, a loving parent will not let their child go through life feeling unsafe, uncertain, unconfident. So we shouldn't do that with the animals either. And training's super easy. They are so motivated to learn. So motivated to learn.
Wonderful. Do you have a favourite animal, Penny?
No, is the really good answer. Of course, everybody wants to know this. Everyone normal has a favorite animal, right? When you're not normal and you work with them every day and your entire life has been structured to shape a skill set so that you can help them, and you meet hundreds of them and you make friends with, I cannot possibly pick, I have my favorite group of animals. I've always been drawn to the mammalian carnivores. Whether we're talking about a little weasel that is as feisty as all get out, or we're talking about a polar bear who is so majestic it almost makes me cry. Like, everyone who's in the carnivore family feels like my family. They're my best friends. I love them. I'm passionate about them. I've worked with them. I get to know them and build a relationship with them. They're just incredible. And it's then be trying to say, pick your favorite child. Like, I can't do that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for explaining for the stark similarities between human well-being and animal well-being. It's remarkable. I had no idea it was actually so closely connected. Everything that you speak in my language, it's fabulous. So how do people get hold of you, Penny?
So I'm Dr Zoolittle on all the social media platforms, pretty easy to find. Website is drzoolittle.co, no UK at the end, just .co. I offer coaching and, as I said, the consulting as well. And there are various events that will come up periodically where you can have live training with me. I'm creating a course which isn't ready yet, but there's lots of different things that I'm allowing how to find out more about what you can do. And it's just wrapping up the two things to take home from this is that whatever you do to extend the health span and the lifespan of your pet can be applied to you, and you can grow younger together. You can literally add years of healthy life to your life. You can drop you can drop biological years off your body. You can have a body of someone who's 50, but biologically you're 36. And it's the same, this is what we're doing with the animals, and what works with the animals works with you, and what works with you works with the animals. So you may as well age younger together, both get healthy together. It costs, as you can see, almost nothing to do some of these things. In fact, many of these things. So why wouldn't you? So I have a quiz that people can do to find out where they are with their pet care and how that is translating to their pet. So you can go to, again, it's on the website, so drzoolittle.co/quiz, or you can just hit the button on the homepage. It will take you straight there. That quiz is totally free, and you then will get a personalised report that goes through a bunch of that information with ways that you can start applying that at home straight away to start shaving off the health issues and adding on the healthy time.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Dr. Zoolittle, for helping both pet and pet parent to be a lot healthier and longer living. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to chat with you. I love the fact that, you know, we're so closely aligned. It's really fun.